Hello class, welcome to week 10. In this week we are going to talk about how to look at the studies that you found from last week and critically appraise them. So a couple things I wanted to clarify from last week were when we were doing the Prisma diagrams, they helped to show the steps or the methods that we use to go through to find the studies that we did. Really the objective of doing this and why people do this is so that people can make sure that your literature review that you did is legit. So they could go and they could run the same exact look at this, find the keywords, run the exact same search, and find the same studies that you did. So reproducibility is a big thing in research, and you want to be able to reproduce what someone else did. And that's how you know that something is valid. So the first step was really to identify those keywords, and I harped on this a little bit, but in page 34 of Pollitt and Beck, they said had a table there, and you could put your PICO into this template, PICO template, and then underword your population, your intervention, your comparator group, and your outcomes, and then those underlined words became your keywords. So we had to step back a little bit and say, because in table 2.1, it has a different template depending on the type of PICO question you're asking. So Pollitt and Beck said that these different questions could be either the first one, treatment / intervention, second one, diagnosis / assessment, prognosis. The next one was causation, etiology / harm, and the final one was meaning or process. So kind of, if you put your PICO into this template, underline the words, find the keywords, then that was what you put into the database, and then you define what years. So those two things were really what happened first. What I saw a few of you do was to use the Prisma generating software, and in that center circle, put your keywords there. So I just pulled up this, and so really if we look at right here is where you get the keywords, right? And so you've already determined your keywords, and then you put into you pick the database and the years, and this comes up here, then duplicates removed, and then you have additional inclusion and exclusion criteria. But in this bubble here, it should not be where the keywords are. So just wanted to point that out, so your final EBP slide for this should not include keywords there, because how would you even get to this point here if you hadn't put your keywords up top? So I like this generator tool here, but it should have had something like right here. If I had created it, that would have said keywords, so you could have seen that there. But anyways, it will become clear what your keywords were when you write out in narrative form the methods that you went through to get to your final number of articles. So what we kind of came up with was, let's get you through last week finding articles, and you should have about 10 to 15 articles at this point to look through. So here we are in Sakai, and we have week 10. The learning outcomes are to understand how to critically appraise the evidence, look at appraisal tools, understand the importance of quality, research, and effect size, and create a summary table, a review of the research evidence. So last week you found the research evidence. This week you're going to appraise it and see, should we use it in practice? So there are some great articles for you to look at this week. The first one is the one we reviewed last week as well, but was the introduction, how to gather and evaluate and record the evidence. So this went through and told you about your, once you got these studies, or how you would go in and you would find these studies. So told you about the hierarchy of evidence for interventional studies. So here we can see that this table is a little bit different from Pollitt and Beck's pyramid that they had in their front cover, and I almost know this by heart. This is scary. Maybe page 17. But let's see. No, I don't know by heart. That's good. Okay, page 25, where they have their hierarchy. They have 8 levels, and this one has 7 levels. And this one kind of gives a little bit more of a nod to qualitative evidence as well. So both of them say systematic reviews or meta-analyses, level 1. Randomized control trials, level 2. The Pollitt and Beck hierarchy has these two combined as one, as a level 3. And then here, this one says systematic review of qualitative descriptive studies is a number 5. So those would be the meta-syntheses. And then qualitative or descriptive studies is number 6, and expert opinion consensus is 7. So for this assignment and this discussion in the part of the EBP that have to do with critical appraisal, I don't care what table or pyramid you use. Just make sure that you let me know which one you use, and you can do that by giving a citation and providing a reference for which one of these that you used. So one of the things I really like about the step-by-step articles is they just walk you through. There's Carlos and Rebecca are walking through the evidence for rapid response team, and so it makes it real. It applies it. For this article this week, they say, okay, which one of these are the keeper studies? So now we've gotten to this point where we have 10 to 15 eligible studies. Which ones, upon deeper exploration, really meet our needs? So they say the keepers, you keep them depending on the level of evidence, how well it's conducted, and how useful it was to practice. So we are going to, this week, find out, really go into a deeper dive into these studies and critically appraise them. We have a discussion this week that you're going to take one article and critically appraise that and present that to your colleagues, and you can post the checklist that you used and the final recommendation. I'm saying not to use a systematic review because we just did that. That was your group assignment. So now you should know how to use the JBI checklist for reviewing systematic reviews. So I'd like you to take one of your studies that you found that is not a systematic review and critically appraise that. There is an additional assignment due, and it's due July 15th, and this is the individual summary table. So what I want you to do is to take 4 to 6 of the articles that you found in last week's class when you were doing your search of the databases, and critically appraise 4 to 6 of these. And what I want you to do is to critically appraise them and to record how you appraise them in a table. I would like you to do at least one quantitative, one qualitative, and one review article for this one. If you have trouble finding a qualitative study, find one that is kind of related to your PICO. So it doesn't have to be directly answering your PICO, but kind of related to it. I know that's come up before. People couldn't find a qualitative one. So do your best I want you to review a qualitative study. And if you can't find one at all related, then let me know and I'll send you a qualitative study to review. So we're going to go and look at this this tool for evidence summary tool, where you're going to record everything that you are critically appraising. So the table should include the author's names, the date, the type of study, the sample size and setting, study findings that help answer the evidence-based question or the PICO, the limitations, and the level of evidence and quality. So include this, how you're going to determine the level of evidence is through that, either the previous slide where I showed you that table from the step-by-step paper, or through the hierarchy, the pyramid in Pollitt and Beck. So that's how you're going to determine the level of evidence, and you're going to put it in this table. How you're going to determine the quality of each one of these studies is through the checklist. Okay? So let's take a look at this table. This is available as one of the resources in this week's in week 10. So let me just show you that. So here's the individual evidence summary table. You click on that. And it should bring you to Johns Hopkins EBP website. It's Appendix G. Here's the URL for the website. So here you have your date, you have your PICO up top, you have your article number. You don't have to put a number if you don't want to. You have 4 to 6, but author and the date, the evidence type. So that really means, is this quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods, or a review? So that's kind of what it's asking for here. If you want to get into it, you can say it's a qualitative study using grounded theory methods. So you could say it's a quantitative study using quasi-experimental design. So that's where kind of all that goes in there. Sample and setting you can find in the methods section. Findings that help answer the EBP question. So go back and say, what is my EBP question? And say, look at the findings and that directly relate to the PICO. Try to filter out all the other findings that are in articles. Sometimes that's the hardest part of doing a literature review. But just look at the one that is related to answering your PICO. The observable measures, these are also known as dependent variables, or your outcomes. So what outcomes were they measuring here? Limitations, usually the study will say that right in there, what their limitations are. So just summarize real quick what the limitations might be there. And then your evidence level, this comes from your hierarchy pyramid or the table from the step-by-step guide. Let me know which one you use. And quality will come from your critical appraisal tool. So for your critical appraisal tools, I really recommend that you use the JBI checklist. And the reason why is because they really give you clear choice of which one to use. So if you go into, this is week 10, go into these tools here, you have one for case control study, case reports, case theories, cohort studies, economic evaluations. I don't think we'll be looking much at that. Prevalence we wouldn't be looking at, but here's quasi-experimental, here's randomized control, systematic reviews, that's the one you used. Here's for expert opinion, cross-sectional studies, otherwise known as cohort studies, and then here's one for qualitative research. So I like that this gives you information about which one of these to choose. And so you just click on whichever one it is. And this one is for qualitative studies, and it goes through and it asks you to answer information related to finding robustness or trustworthiness in a qualitative study, and you just say yes or no, unclear, not applicable. And I also like that if you read through one of these questions and you say, what the heck does that mean? Is there congruity between the stated philosophical perspective and the research methodology? What? You can go right down to here, and it gives you, it describes it a little bit more, so it doesn't leave you hanging, so you can really go in and read this part and then apply it and answer the question a little bit better. What you can put in the table is just whether you're going to include, exclude, seek further info, and then just one or two sentences, probably just one sentence or bullet point, reasons why you excluded it. So sample size was too small, or not generalizable to African Americans in urban areas, or whatever the reasons why you found that study was that you were going to exclude it. You can put there if you're going to include it, and say robust study, or met all inclusion exclusion criteria, directly answers PICO, seek further info, why you're going to seek further info. So in week 10 for resources, you have these step-by-step studies. This one gives a more, applies the team, Carlos and Rebecca, going through the studies, and they look closely at a randomized control study. This one is really helpful. It goes through the table, how these two nurses went through and created their table. They put in the independent and dependent variables in there. Really cool thing I think they have here. It's not the number of studies or projects that determines the reliability of their findings, but the uniformity and quality of their methods. And that's really, in a nutshell, why we're doing critical appraisals, to make sure that we have high quality studies informing how we're going to change our practice. There's also a YouTube in here, and this goes through a professor critically appraising the literature, and I think that's really helpful as well. So I think that's all I have to tell you about for this week. Please let me know if there's anything that remains unclear, if you have any comments or questions, if a link doesn't work, anything at all. I really appreciate getting the feedback from you. And again, thanks a lot for filling out those mid-course surveys. It's the reason why I'm doing these videos now. So any feedback that you give me, I'm going to try to incorporate and make your lives easier and research more fun, if it could ever be fun. Okay, have a great rest of your day and take care.